Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Better Mix series. I'm really excited today because we're going to start mixing the snare drum, which I love vocals. I've done a lot of vocal mixing on this channel, but drums in general, but snare drum is just so much fun to mix. And I'm going to show you some really cool and creative ways to mix a snare drum and to make it big and awesome and powerful. But before we get into this video, I made a vocal preset bundle specifically for you if you are mixing vocals and you're trying to figure out EQ and learn compressors and learn how to add some saturation to your vocal. This preset is perfect for you. It's over 30 presets for all these plugins inside of GarageBand that are all completely free. If you want to download that, it's at cellardoorsound.co/free presets, or just click the link in the description and it'll take you right there. And it even comes with a free training video that shows you, one, how to put these presets into your computer so that they work flawlessly. And they also work for Logic as well. So if you're a Logic user or you plan to upgrade in the future, they'll work in that platform. And it shows you how to manipulate these presets to make them perfect for your vocal, because not every vocal is the same, of course, and the presets are built in a way that you can affect just a couple little components of them and make them just sound awesome and big and huge, and that's what we want. We want better music. So go grab that. The whole point of that preset bundle is honestly to teach you more and to get you to release more music. That's the whole point of this channel, is to get you to be confident in your mixing and make stuff sound good, and be confident in that to send out to people and your friends and your family and let them hear just the awesome music that you're creating. So yeah, let's get in today's video. All right, so this is going to be a good one. This is all on snare drum, and this might be a little bit a longer one because snare drum takes just a little bit of finessing to me. I like to make sure it's in the right pocket and it's sounding good and sounding cohesive with the kick drum. So let's just jump into this. Let's listen to where we're at right now. I went ahead and went to the second verse so we have a better position here. All right, cool. So I'm actually going to mute the overheads. We're getting a lot of bleed, and it actually sounds really good in the overheads, but I want to kind of single out the snare, and we're going to make the snare sound great on its own with the song without these overheads in, and then we're going to mess with the overheads in another video. All right, cool. So the snare, you can hear, kind of sounds a little bit dead. Let's listen to just the kick and the snare. Just a snare. All right, so you can hear there's a little bit of bleed in the snare drum, and we want to take some of that out. We want to take all of it out, but I searched forever trying to find a free gate for GarageBand, and it was really hard because most of them did too much. They took out too much of the snare, and they didn't sound very good, and they kind of ruined the sound, but I finally found one. This is Dotech Audio, or Dotech, and it's called D-Gate. This thing is very, very simple, and it's awesome, really awesome. Basically what a gate is you set a threshold, and any audio that's below that setting will be turned off, basically. So if the snare comes above this slider, then it's going to stay on, and as soon as the audio goes below this slider, then it will cut it. So gates in general, you want to be really careful with these because you can really mess up your snare drum by gating it way too hard, and we just want to just keep in mind. So usually what I do is I push play and I just slowly just start bringing this guy up to where I can hear it actually gating and not messing up the snare drum. So this is a good example. This gate's a little bit too high, the threshold's too high, and you can hear that I'm taking everything out in between the snare hits and that kick hit, which I'm not super worried about, but it's kind of squashing the snare and you're not getting the full resonance of the drum. which this can really kill your performance in the track especially. So let's go down and find the sweet spot. All right, so that's not bad. So let's turn off the gate and listen. You get that hi-hat, you get some cymbals in there. Let's turn it on. Cool, and we're even getting those little side sticks there, which is really nice. And yeah, that is awesome. So we have the gate. Okay, so now we're gonna do something a little bit different. The snare drum was recorded pretty well, but I want a little more grit out of it before I really start to mess with it. So what we're going to do is we are going to add some distortion. So I'm going to go down to audio units and then Apple, which everyone has if you have an Apple computer, which you do because you're on GarageBand. And we're going to go to this distortion plugin, which looks crazy. Okay, this is a really awesome plugin. The first thing that we're going to want to do is turn all these mix knobs right here. This is just delay, which we don't want. This is a ring mod. We want to make sure the mix percentage is at 0. And this decimation is also at 0. We're not wanting to use any of these. We just want this overdrive here. So right now, our overdrive is pretty high. I'm just going to let you listen to what it sounds like just in this raw setting here. Obviously, it's too intense and too much, so we're going to lower this gain here to, let's just try about here, and let's listen. Okay, I'm going to take this soft clip, and we're going to turn this up a little bit. All right, and then we're going to lower our wet-dry mix. This is a mix between our dry signal that has no distortion on it and our plugin that is the distortion. Okay, cool. So this is very subtle, but it's just adding just a little bit of grit, and it sounds pretty good. So let's get out of this. All right, so now what we are going to do is add some compression, my favorite thing. And I love this compressor by Tokyo Dawn Labs. It is the TDR Kotelnikov. It's probably sounds German. This is a really good compressor. The compressors inside of GarageBand are okay, but to me, they kind of mess with the sound a little bit too much. So usually if I'm doing compression inside of GarageBand, I will always opt in for a different third-party free compressor. So this one's really good. So the first thing we're going to do is take our ratio. Usually like to make it pretty high. We're going to do like 4:1 here. And I'm going to raise this threshold to where I'm listening a lot for this, but I'm kind of shooting on my gain reduction somewhere like 4 to 6 dB here, and you'll see it kind of slam down when the snare drum hits. So let's try. Cool. So this is a little advanced, but I'm going to make this attack a little bit faster. This is basically how fast our compressor is working. So I'm really trying to kind of attack that transient, and then I'm going to turn down our releases here just a little bit. So we're going to make this pretty fast as well, our peak, and then we'll make this guy not quite as fast, but let's listen how this sounds. All right, cool. And then now we're going to turn up the gain, because now that we're really compressing this and we're trying to make this snare just be full and have have impact and be consistent. And then we're going to use the overheads to get back our dynamics a little bit. So we're going to turn up this makeup gain quite a bit and maybe the output gain just to get the volume I want. And I'm going to have the kick and snare on so I can have reference here. All right, cool. That sounds pretty good. Let's listen to it with the song. Awesome. So it's sounding pretty full, pretty big. This compressor's doing a really, really great job of kind of keeping hold of the snare, but it's not sounding like way too compressed, which is nice. That's why I like this compressor. It's very difficult to get that sound with a just stock GarageBand compressor. All right, so after listening to that with the whole band, it sounds like the snare drum just a little dead, like I'm getting it where I want it to be, but it's just a little bit dead to me. So, of course, we will grab an EQ. So we're just going to do just the normal GarageBand EQ here. All right, and the first thing that I'm going to do is take out some of the low. So I'm going to do a low cut here, and I'm probably going to be about in this area, but let's listen to it. Let's see if I can. All right, so that's pretty decent. I'm just really trying to get a little bit of the rumble out, if there is any. And then I'm hearing a tone somewhere here that I'm not really liking, that's not making it jump out at me. So I'm going to grab this guy. We're going to tighten the Q just a little bit, and I'm going to turn it up and try and find this tone in the drum that just sounds, I don't know, a little too dead to me. Okay, so that's definitely the tone right there. I'm going to push play and then turn this gain down so we don't lose our frequency, which is about 440 hertz. All right, and always when I'm doing EQ on drums or really anything else, I like to turn off and on that band just to make sure that I'm in the right spot or it's the frequency I want. Sometimes I'll turn this off and the sound will be better. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's not the right move. In this case, though, it sounds pretty good right here. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is add that bite into the drum. And usually with a snare drum, if I'm lacking that energy and I want it to be just more aggressive, I'll kind of go between this 1K to 4K-ish area and try and boost there. So we're going to bring this guy up. I'm going to tighten the Q just a bit. Oops, wrong way. That looks about right. And I'm going to try and find where I like it here. Cool, so that seems like it's in a good spot, just adding a little bit more bite. And then the last thing that we're gonna do is I want a little more low end out of this snare because it sounds pretty good right now, but I know with the whole track, I'm gonna want a little bit more. Sometimes when you're boosting snare drum here, especially in this kind of bitey area and then in low end, sometimes it'll sound too much, like when you're just doing it soloed, just the snare, and then you'll play it with the track and realize you need more. So I'm gonna grab this guy. We're going to do the same thing, tighten the Q here. Do a little tighter than we did on this side. And I'm going to boost it up and find the frequency I want. Cool, so that sounds pretty good. Let's listen to it with the track. Cool. So when I listened to the track, I realized I needed a little more high end on the snare. It was just lacking just a tiny bit, but it sounds pretty good where it's at. So let's hear with the track. I'm going to turn off our plugins that we did on the snare, and we'll listen to it without them, and then we'll throw them on and see if we made an improvement. All right, let's turn these plugins on. Cool, so now it's sitting in a pretty good spot. It sounds big and full, and it's awesome. All right, so we're just missing one thing, and that is snare reverb. Snare reverb is so important in a track like this especially. And as if you've been watching some of my videos, you know how I like to do reverb. I never grab this guy and go down here and turn up the reverb. I like to have a little more control, and at the end of the day, it makes your mix just easier to mix because you actually have a fader that you can do your reverb. And I'll show you what I'm talking about if you do not know. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually export just this snare drum exactly how it is with all of our plugins on. So I want to make sure and set my little cycle guy so that we have the whole track, and I want to make sure that we're getting it right on the beginning. Yep, cool. Okay, and so I'm going to export just this track and bring it back in and add reverb on it. So normally I would duplicate track and bring it down, but we're kind of adding a lot of plugins here, and it's just going to be so much easier and less harsh on my computer if I bounce this track and add it in with reverb on top of it. And these plugins, just the settings are all there. So the first thing that we want to do is go to your preferences and advanced, and you want to make sure this auto normalize export products at full volume is unchecked. Do not have this checked because we don't want our snare level to change at all, and this will make it a whole lot louder. So that's very important. And then now we're going to go to share, export song to disk. I'm going to save this to my downloads, which is already there, and make sure wave is selected, and we have our uncompressed 24-bit, which is basically where we're at here. And I'm going to name this snare reverb and export. So the reason I named it snare reverb is basically because whenever this exports, it'll just be named snare reverb, and then we'll bring it into our session and it's already named, so you don't have to rename it, which is kind of cool here. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to go to my downloads and grab this, bring it in, make sure that it's at the front of the track. And then we're going to bring it up all the way right underneath our verb, and you can see it's labeled snare reverb, so we don't have to change it. All right, so let's go back to where we were. Now I'm going to add a reverb. So we're gonna use the stock reverb here, and we're gonna go to platinum verb. All right, so this is a pretty good sounding reverb, and I like this preset here, low soft reverb. So I'm going to take down this dry percentage here, and I'm going to add a little bit of pre-delay. So pre-delay is basically how long the signal is going to wait before it plays that reverb. And then we're going to make this just a little bit longer here. Let's just go to like 2 seconds, and let's hear how it sounds with the snare drum. All right, cool. So that's not that bad. Kind of sounds like a lot, but in the track, it's not going to be quite as intense. So now that we have our reverb settings, I want to add an EQ right after that reverb. And we want to cut quite a bit of the low end out of this. We just don't need a lot of that low end inside. It's really in there because it just dirties up your mix. At the end of the day, that's all it does. And then there's a tone I'm hearing inside the reverb that I don't like. And so I'm going to get this band here and kind of search around for it. I'm not sure where it is, but I know it's just kind of a weird tone. All right, cool. So let's hear it with the track and see how it's sounding. All right, cool. So that's sounding like it's in a pretty good spot. The reverb sounded like a lot when I just had the snare and reverb on, but as we played the track, I realized I needed more of it. And so I just messed with a couple other settings. I added a little bit more pre-delay. I raised this wet percentage just to get a little bit more reverb. And the EQ is sounding good. So let's hear where we're at today. I'm going to turn off the reverb and turn off of all of our plugins. And we're going to play exactly how the track is before we started messing with the snare. All right, cool. So now we're going to turn on the verb. And we're going to turn on our plugins and listen now. Awesome. That is a huge improvement. It's the track already is starting to sound like a professional production. Before, whenever we had the plugins off, it didn't sound too great, and then it just really came out, and yeah, it's in a super good spot. So that is the video today. That is Snare Part 3. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't yet, go grab my Ultimate Vocal Preset Bundle. Over 30 presets for EQ, compression, saturation. It's awesome. Go grab that at cellardoorsound.co/free presets. And thank you so much for watching. Definitely subscribe if you haven't. Throw a like in there. It always helps the channel. And I will see you next week where we're going to work on some toms. And I'm excited for that one. I have some things that you may not have heard of before. Thank you so much.